That said, our primary purpose is to entertain, and where we can entertain responsibly, obviously we try to do that. We try to have a positive impact on the world, but the first thing we need to do is entertain.
There was an in-depth piece, like a behind-the-scenes piece, talking about how they've been in a full meltdown about this girl for a couple of years now.
AMC's declaration that it would take away Snow White's live action. All of its cinema's adaptations came as a surprise to the business. Disney had originally anticipated a successful run that was thwarted by the original story's iconic status, as well as the celebrity power connected to the latest project. But in a startling move, AMC stated that both fans and analysts that it has no more justification for keeping sales of the movie on its screens had fell so precipitously that continued to display the movie was equivalent to losing income.
Yeah, I have a clip of it.
Oh, okay, great.
Her being a retard.
Okay.
It's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White.
That laugh.
That is
not going to be saved by
You
the
wrote
prince.
it?
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
Vacant theatrical seats that might have been sold for more lucrative championships. The decline has been developing for weeks. However, none anticipated how it would end. Even Disney, which has a lot of resources, and the renowned marketing machine, was unable to preserve this modification from the disputes that had plagued it. Every time the meltdown occurs in real time, television, the gossip that goes on behind the scenes, the conflict between each cast member, helped fuel a growing fan resentment, louder and more obstinate with each day by day.
It just takes a beloved movie and makes it much more boring and much less realistic. The movie is really, really bad.
Disney's advertising campaign had pledged a new interpretation of a legendary tale involving a rising celebrity, Rachel Zegler, and a well-known Galadoo celebrity, but hardly all of the potential problems were resolved. Incorrect, leading to AMC's historic choice to end the movie's theatrical ran out of time before it could acquire any last-minute traction sector. Analysts rushed to comprehend the underlying reason for this disaster.
Our rights are on the line, folks.
Bitch! The right to buy Cosby sweaters?
Come on.
That's the face of a serial killer.
And if you disagree with this sentiment, just hit the unfollow button.
According to some, supporters had become tired of Disney's repeated efforts to update. Others thought that its classic catalog, the crisis involving Rachel Zegler, and her forceful public declarations, paired with a business public relations plan that seemed forced and unnatural, caused the disastrous decline in attendance, regardless of the specific causes. The outcome was same to the movies. Poor box office results were exacerbated by a surge of unfavorable press made it impossible for AMC to defend holding on to it. Its panels tell the tale of a once this promising film hit a low point, becomes a story in and of itself about Joe Rogan, beware of studios everywhere. In a lengthy monologue about his well-liked podcast, examined the disaster in meticulous attention to detail.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Say it louder so your other eye can hear you.
So we didn't do that this time.
He emphasized that when AMC declared the film's elimination was more than merely an indication of low numbers, it was viewers now have a cultural moment, compelling evidence that Disney's standard benefits of marketing using brand loyalty, star-studded casts with prowess were not always sufficient to ensure success. Everything had been eclipsed by the catastrophe. Further details regarding the film, Roger traced the sequence of events that resulted in the collapse.
But the primary suffering is being sent in by my company to watch a children's movie as a single man, like 2 p.m. on a Thursday. That was the first part that was a little bit weird, but I was basically the only person in the theater.
Such as Rachel Zegler's open interviews, her surprising comments on the see also her tweets on social media that differed significantly from Disney's. The Meltdown's chosen messaging, placed in front of a live audience in the studio, transforming a contained press promotion into an attention-grabbing headline. Spectacle, as stated by Rogan, the breakdown would have caused harm under any situation, but when combined, significant modifications to the cherished tale itself.
You don't particularly see people who, look like me or are me playing roles like that. So it was definitely, when it got announced,
He wasn't a stalker, by the way.
thing that was like trending on Twitter for days because all of the people were angry.
It produced a ideal storm of unfavorable criticism. Rachel, the incident started out innocently enough. At first, Zegler was seen as an inspiring selection for the fresh lead she had displayed. Vocal ability demonstrated a contemporary awareness that could appeal to youngsters, audiences, and held up the possibility of connecting the ancient and the modern. But when information regarding the adaptation surfaced, fans learned about that important story, character arcs, and important concepts having been significantly changed or eliminated altogether.
And so it was like
Those people.
very much this, yes. It
Yeah,
was this
the people that
We
awakening
need
of,
to educate the people that we need to love into awareness.
love them in the right direction.
The change from an accurate recounting to a reimagined storyline caused a surge of some questioned whether Disney's an attempt to revise the narrative had also failed. Far from giving up the sentimental core of both the initial and during this conflict in Rachel Zegler's public image contributed fuel to the fire that she occasionally said contemptuously of the classic components of the narrative, or at the very least that was the way a lot of fans saw her. Comments.
We need to no, you don't need, it's not your job. Your job is to entertain. You are paid to entertain.
It was hoped that the movie's repute prior to its release in theaters to make sure the negative wouldn't overshadow the first weekend of operation. But the independence of Rachel Zegler conflicted with Disney's attempts to control her from the top down. On social media, she shared her personal opinions, occasionally claiming with pride that she wouldn't sacrifice her morals for a business narrative. This position could have garnered praise in an alternative background, yet considering the delicate nature of the objective as well as the viewer's protectiveness of the original narrative.
Very few people wanted to see this. Even the little kids who like Disney movies, even they don't seem to be turning up in droves for the movie because the movie is really, really bad.
It made the dispute more heated. Critics contended that her remarks frequently seems patronizing to those who loved the earlier movie. According to the defenders, she was only promoting a contemporary viewpoint, supporting representation and tolerance despite the conflict between a vocal celebrity and a multinational company soon turned into the pivotal narrative, eclipsing conversations on the creative components.
And so I've got some bona fides here on being fair. The movie was absolutely terrible.
As the surrounding conversation, potential problems at the box office increased. According to industry insiders, Disney executives were becoming more and more. Bob Iger was nervous and had just returned to a position of high leadership and had a repute for navigating deftly business disputes, but with each, as time went on, it appeared that the studio's crisis management strategy was deficient in coherence as opposed to a cohesive message. Fans saw statements that were inconsistent from cast members, rumors regarding upheaval behind the scenes.
In every way that the movie differed from the beloved 1937 original, it was worse.
With a feeling that nobody completely recognized the extent of the issue, the view's disintegration was the most obvious example of this. Nevertheless, the show had been carefully chosen by Disney's public relations division as a cozy platform, a daylight setting renowned for its capacity to involve spectators in mainstream discussions. The expectation was that she may be shared by Rachel Zegler. Experiences respond to fan complaints and show that even though the adaptation was contemporary, yet it paid tribute to the original spirit behind the scenes, but tensions began to rise.
It basically, this movie was like you took the original Snow White and just put everything through this filter of liberalism. It wasn't through a filter of Japanese anime, it was through a filter of liberalism.
Producing team from according to reports, View received direct Disney's guidelines regarding favored locations where Zegler should discuss, highlight, and angles she should stay away from. However, as soon as the section started, it became clear that Rachel Zegler was the owner of own agenda that she wished to discuss, political issues that have nothing to do with the movie, and she didn't seem really interested in saying the sterile lines in the studio. Had the producers of the show ready, feeling Disney's pressure, tried to get her back on course.
So from the casting to the class politics, the sexual politics, the regime politics, everything about it was liberal.
However, the conflict was all throughout the live telecast. She made claims that detractors would subsequently incendiary call, implying the main ideas of the narrative were out of date, and that viewers who held on too firmly to fans of change must accept their nostalgia, who were already undecided over the adaptation. Listened to these remarks as anger is fueled by a direct insult that went viral on social media. Shortly after, the actual meltdown happened. According on eyewitness reports, there were frantic off-camera motions as producers attempted to interrupt Zegler or change the subject. She wouldn't be. Directed her to emphasize her comments even more. Section became unmanageable. So, quick enough for the Views to host Whoopi, Sunny Holland, and Goldberg Joy Behar were rushed to complete airtime security, or Zegler was escorted by show personnel. The camera panned from the set to an sudden commercial disruption and collapse. Never shown in its entirety, but brief snippets and instantaneous secondhand reporting spread online, supporting a media, jokes, firestorm memes, and a deluge of. The internet was filled with fury, guaranteeing that each and every conversation that follows regarding the movie would return to that wild scene. Live appearance on his podcast, Joe Rogan's analysis detailed a PR catastrophe meltdown not only had Disney lost narrative control, yet it did so in the most conspicuous manner. It is feasible to transmit live with extensive audience harm prevention strategies were started right away, but the meltdown had become independent.
Snow White is generally understood to be a very, very white person. And in this case, they decided, no, that doesn't make any sense. So I don't think we're allowed to say that, right? I was referring to the movie as sand beige.
A focal point for people who thought the updated Snow White was disrespectful to the Rachel Zegler's initial detractors observed her collapse as evidence that she was also obstinate for a task that needed at least a certain amount of respect for business plan, while her supporters asserted that she was fully entitled to express her opinions. The disaster drew criticism from the media at large, landscape that overshadows the other members of the cast, including Galadue, had been chosen for a prominent role in numerous. Thought that having her there could provide a star wattage's balancing impact and a sense of established legitimacy. However, as soon as the story of the meltdown took over GDU and was forgotten about, Roger noted that in accordance with, there may have been conflict, according to rumors, between the accusations of the two actors. Went around that Rachel Zegler had quietly questioned the history of GDU or political opinions. However, these unsubstantiated rumors helped to the perception that the whole production was hampered by disputes, lowering any expectations that the cast might display a unified front that is distant herself from the turmoil, providing just general expressions of enthusiasm for the. Some people thought that by keeping GDAU's impartial position was intended to preserve her own reputation, while the movie's promotion lost its positive vibes and cohesiveness. Disney's initial intended tone swapped out for a whirling whirlpool of conjecture regarding who concurred or disagreed with the main character.
It's no really knock on her. If you did the autobiography of Malcolm X, would you cast Tom Hanks? If you remade Moana, would you cast a little Irish guy? No, you wouldn't. So that was off the top.
The social media reaction from fans was harsh. Not my Snow White, but exploded with numbers. Hashtags, which made some followers feel deceived. Thus far, the adaptation had deviated from what they loved about the traditional. Zegler's account angered some people. Apparent contempt for senior citizens. Disney customs the box office figures. This was mirrored on the first weekend. Unfavorable opinion, even though Disney invested enormous sums of money in. The movie's promotion fell short of even the most cautious forecasts. Chains of theaters such as AMC, which had certain screens in the aim of a blockbuster, discovered that they were playing the movie to parents in half-empty auditoriums, directed their kids in the direction of other releases because they sensed the latest adaptation was too contentious, or due to the fact that they were turned off by the continuous negative publicity as the sales decline became indisputable, and AMC discovered at a turning point, usually a big Disney release guarantees a time slot in theaters that are advantageous to the studio and the exhibitors, but as the drawback, AMC saw the headlines piling up and realized it was ticket sales were so low that they were losing money, that it was more cost-effective to move screens to more dependable actors. The movie had turned poisonous. Scandal overshadows even the promise of a lavish show was insufficient to attract viewers weary of dispute.
It is not racist to suggest that a character who is described in the original as skin white as snow, that is literally how the character is described in the original, that's a character description in the same way that, as you mentioned, in Moana.
Thus, in a move that sector, veterans demanded an unprecedented. AMC removed a blockbuster Disney picture completely out of its theaters. The timing of each region had a different decision, but shortly after, AMC's official channels verified that they were removing the stopper when a comment was requested. According to AMC management, the movie's performance did not support the ongoing distribution of screens. Internally, there were whispers regarding the local theater's pushback. Supervisors who submitted daily reports of poor attendance, many claimed that customers would pass the poster of Snow White without a second look, or they'd publicly talk about how the movie didn't look attractive. Following the catastrophe, the whole disaster spread to the whole public awareness in a manner that left AMC without choice other than to remove certain critiques. Believed that the relationship between AMC and this may cause tension with Disney occurrence, but some retorted that Disney may have quietly agreed with the choice in the end if the movie wasn't continuing to make money, showing it simply made the embarrassment worse. Preferable to discreetly move on and allow the Joe take center stage for the next big release. Rogan paid particular attention to this instance, describing it as a turning point. In his opinion, wasn't just about AMC's timetable preferences. It served as an indication that in the whole mechanism in which Disney and big exhibitors who collaborate with one another potentially break down as a movie becomes too contentious despite having a large budget and prestige. Images are susceptible to yanking if they don't reach the audience. Rogers reaffirmed expectations for how the view's disintegration was the pivotal moment. There had been optimism before to that. According to several insiders, the modification may continue to pique interest in families that weren't actively involved in the dispute, but after the breakdown, video and the myths surrounding it circulated, any conflict shifted to complete indifference or even animosity. The collapse had torn away any illusion of normally and made a production visible on the verge of anarchy. This, additionally, meltdown became a warning story of the way studios manage live interviews are typically somewhat tight. Planned ad campaigns to maintain a consistent message, and a talking point was locked into the star's story, but the unscripted live The View's surroundings revealed how these excursions might be extremely vulnerable. Rachel Zegler made the decision to express her personal viewpoints. The producers had little influence. They attempted to stop her, but the meltdown that ensued was irreversible and echoed over the entire. Disney's attempt in the entertainment industry to clamp down just made things appear worse, confirming the idea that the studio was causing harm. Control at the price of candid communication. Supporters who had been merely keeping up with the abruptly become involved in the story, if only to observe the show in real time. Meanwhile, Bob Iger took over as boss, scrutinized by going back to Disney at a turbulent period in which Iger had inherited a list of remade films at different phases of. Many had performed well in the production. Outside the studio had become certain that merely including the name of Disney and a well-known title would attract families to movie theaters, but the snow disaster White exposed the boundaries of that approach when unfavorable rumors start to spread of control, regardless of how well-known or cherished the original source material is. It can and will be rejected by audiences. The meltdown was attacked by critics as evidence of Disney's complacency, believing it might bring a classic up to date, without giving enough consideration to what made the breakdown unique as well. Revealed an unsettling weakness in Disney's PR strategies typically work in tandem with corporate headquarters, marketing departments, and Disney's success is characterized by its stars. Here, the synergy disintegrated rather than a thoughtfully constructed story that the public observed misunderstanding and internal conflict to further exacerbate the chaos.